I always get the stuff like, I never want to meet you in a dark alley. First of all, what am I doing in that dark alley, and what are you doing with me in it? You go, wah, woo. And I go, Preparation H does wonders for that. You really should take care of those hemorrhoids you're having problems with. Are you on medication for that? You get to do the two things you can't do during sex: point and laugh. And if I get you to accomplish those two things, I've done my job. You can imitate Bruce Lee. You start with Elmer Fudd. It's like a finger pointing the way to the moon, you wascally webbit. In Dragon, they use one of his great jokes when he meets Raymond Chow from Golden Harvest. He says, Bruce, I've been running all over Hong Kong trying to find you. He looks at him and goes, you should use a car. The nature recently of MMA, I'm sorry, I don't want to dress in my underwear and fight in a cage like a pit bull. I don't want to be an animal that has to urinate and gets connected when they're having sex and run down the street copulating. No, I'm not a dog. I'm an intelligent form of life. Thank you. I'm considered a martial arts historian. Matter of fact, in my industry, I'm quoted as a, quote, walking encyclopedia of martial arts. What's it take to be a grandmaster? I said, your instructors die. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. If the worst thing I do is drink Sunkist orange soda, hey, I'm a type 2 diabetic, I understand, but you know what? It still tastes good. I am an artist. And I always say that. I always have been an artist all my life. And my fingers went up under the person's eyelid, over the top of their eye, and touched their optic nerves in the back of their brain where it connects with their brain. His head jerked back, screaming, rolling on the floor. Fear breeds respect. No one deserves to die. Some people sure put themselves on a nomination ballot, but no one deserves to die. Hi there, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Joseph Rebelo, known on the internet and martial arts world as KenpoJoe. Been involved in martial arts now for, October will be 58 years in the martial arts. And I am a Hatch Street Studios artist and have been for 26 years at this location. Matter of fact, I'm one of the oldest artists here at the studios. Today, to show my artistic expression on various apparatus. Sometimes you just got to reach out and touch someone. But here's the key. The beauty of our expression, sometimes you look at certain pieces of art and you want to reach out and touch it. You want to feel it. There's certain arts that's specifically made so you interact with it. Here we're going to work on two devices. This is an apparatus called KenpoMan. It's one of 65 different devices that one of my instructors, Grandmaster David German, I'm wearing his rank from Thai, Transition Action Incorporated, formulated and patented. He made several different devices called the Ninja Man, the Kempo Man, and the Kempo Warrior. And what we're going to do, it has like a musical pattern. Come back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All good children go to heaven. This is a technique known as Thunder Fist. And we're also dealing with the rationale of more than one attack. So I'm going to block chop. I'm going to block chop, check, elbow. I'm going to block chop, check, elbow, grab, back fist. I'm going to block chop, check, elbow, grab, back fist.
Can you talk about the relationship of martial arts to visual arts?
Certainly. First and foremost, I am an artist. It's in the job description. Many years ago, we had a certain group in relation to the studios that didn't feel I was a real artist. I was very offended by that. Now, with the present administration, people are more aware of the cross-referencing of the visual arts. I'm visual as the day is long. Every time I move, whether it's empty hand or with a weapon, whether it's by myself or demonstrating on a partner, I'm creating my art. I'm demonstrating my artistic skills, talents, and abilities. I am an artist. I express myself through my art. In this case, my art is the martial arts. A vast, long history through various Asian cultures, expressing themselves through everything from channeling different animals and following their movements to practical self-defense to ancient, archaic, and exotic weaponry. It's the beauty of the art. I show what I know. And that's really the joy of it. Truly, I am an artist. And to be able to express your art in such a fashion. Um, it's something that it's yours. People say, oh, there's no I in team. I said, but there's three in individual to express myself through my art and various martial arts from every culture, from China to Okinawa to Japan to Korea to the Indonesian archipelago and the Philippines to even Western or American martial arts. I express myself through that. And that's the beauty of the art.
So if you were to categorize your martial arts in a form of visual arts, what form of visual arts would it be?
Oh, all the martial arts are visual arts, whether you're expressing yourself through the beauty and circular motions of, say, praying mantis kung fu, the ancient slow motion, relaxed movements of Tai Chi, the more explosive and dynamic actions of Kempo karate, the law of the fist. Again, also the Filipino arts of utilizing sticks and weaponry to demonstrate your skills, the flowing circular motions, the striking patterns of the various sticks and other weaponry. The dynamic kicking arts such as Taekwondo and Northern Kung Fu. So the expression of those visual arts, whether linear or circular, hard or soft, dynamic and explosive or soft, yielding and pliable. This shows you the diversity of that given field in relationship to visualization of seeing the art and explaining the art. We always say in the martial arts, one of my instructors, Ed Parker, had a great phrase. It's all about not only what something contains, but what it teaches as well. And when a person looks at a painting, they see the expression of the artist and they draw their own connotations from what they get out of seeing that painting or any form of artistic expression for that matter.
If you were to categorize your martial arts in a particular style of visual arts, like abstract or surrealism or something like that, what would it be?
Well, that's the beauty of it, that it is so diversified. The medium itself is diversified. Again, if you look, my instructor at Parker would always quote the salient features in martial arts. And he would mention about when he created and became a grand master of his particular system, he quoted looking at the salient features that the artists, not just martial artists, but Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Picasso, in the field of science, Madame Curie, Jonas Salk, Louis Pasteur. He said, what was the one salient feature that bound them all together as a relationship to being an artist? And that was a masterpiece, a piece of work or body of work that stood the test of time. In visual arts, we have different mediums and different expressions in different time frames, whether it's Cubism or Expressionism or the Baroque period and seeing how different artists utilize their arts. So too in the martial arts, we have that as well. That various martial arts have salient features and various aspects that give them a connotation and a clear-cut idea of how that art is expressed. But in this reference, we show it in relationship to practical self-defense, but also the artistic art from years or decades or centuries gone by.
As a Kung Fu master, what would be your definition of art?
Art. The art is what transitions just practical beat 'em up waza into a true expression. For instance, if I'm demonstrating different animal styles, I at times will channel the animal, as it were. If I'm doing tiger style, fujiao. if I'm doing the aspects of the praying mantis, the trapping and locking and interweaving motions, if I'm doing the flowing soft motions of the crane, striking with its beak, opening its wings, utilizing it to parry, to depict the art and depict the animal performing the art. At that point, I'm expressing myself. I'm giving a true artistic expression by channeling that particular animal or bird or insect in relationship to that. And in so doing, I now create an artistic expression.
Can you talk about the influences of Asia on you?
Well, certainly, where would I be without it? I mean, I do what I love. I love what I do, and I do it for a living, and it all comes from Asia. And I should say, I'm not. This is far beyond the local karate school. I literally run a martial arts museum. Many people, I'm considered a martial arts historian. Matter of fact, in my industry, I'm quoted as a quote walking encyclopedia of martial arts. I've spent my entire lifespan. I not only have I have a 162 IQ, a photo identic memory as opposed to photographic. And I'm constantly cross-referencing. I have one of the largest martial arts book, video, and magazine collections in the United States, with over 20,000 titles between films and documentaries and books and various magazines and periodicals from the last 50 years plus. And in the old days, I didn't just read magazines, I memorized them. So when I could quote them, I would be able to quote intelligently and articulately. Many times, for my television program, Martial Arts Today, one of the great things when I deal with my different interviewees is normally it's like, how do you know that? Normally followed by, why do you know that? And knowing intricate and personal elements about their life and career and be able to talk to them in a more educated fashion and bring up various features of their life and career to share their journey with the world.
Can you talk about which form of martial arts you specialize in?
What's my favorite or what I teach?
What's your best at, for instance?
Well, I am KenpoJoe. So Kenpo is what I love to do. I do many martial arts. I mean, I literally, people ask me, someone asked me, how many martial arts have you studied? And I went, 60. It was like, 60? I was, yeah. And it's like, how many black belts do you have? I said, right now, 26. And I said, I kind of collect them like trading stamps. I find them, it's like Pokemon cards. Got to get them all, Always, always something new to learn. I'm a perpetual student, and that's the key. Someone asked me the other day, a while back, they asked me, what's it take to be a grandmaster? I said, your instructors die. And that really shocked me when I said, no, it's true, It's the natural evolution and the process of growth. And but I'm also the eternal student. I'm always learning more. I'm always in a constant state of awe. It's all about arts. When you see a particular piece of art and it fascinates you, and you sit there and you study the brush strokes, and you study the composition, and you study the subject matter, and you look at how that person picked that particular topic, whether it be still life or action and movement, whatever it may be, you look at that particular artist's expression of that given art using that particular medium. We do the same thing in martial arts. It's not any different. I am an artist. And I always say that. I always have been an artist all my life. And it's learning that artistic expression and appreciating everyone's medium and how they choose to depict their given art.
So why martial arts?
When I was 7 years old, my father and I were doing father-son horseplay. He hit me with a karate chop and dropped me. Instead of crying, I looked at him and said, what was that? He goes, that's karate. I was like, what's karate? Got to realize it was 1968. I was a small child. I wasn't familiar with martial arts. And he started explaining that he was studying at a local martial arts school here in New Bedford, and the brother of the instructor had turned him on to that. And back then, there were no children, there were no women. It was a men's only club. And the founder of that particular system, Masoyama, a system called Kyokushin, literally in his lifetime killed 52 bulls with his bare hands. He was known as one. He literally was a devastating individual. And so I couldn't go to school. So he would teach me little things here and there. And then eventually, with the advent of the 70s and the Kungfu craze, I started at a commercial school, United Students of Self-Defense, from a gentleman, Fred Villari, that created the chain, with a gentleman, Ed Hosmer, Fred E. Hosmer, known as Ed Hosmer. And I was picked on as a child. I was born grossly pigeon-toed. I could not run like the other children. I became very overweight because of that, and children are cruel. So I was picked on, at one point beaten on literally a daily basis. So the martial arts enabled me to defend myself. And I learned that, you don't just blithely use it, only when absolutely necessary. And I had an incident in third grade where a young man was beating on me and hit me in the back of my head, and my vision went white. And I went back to my martial arts training, did a nukate, spear hand. Never forget his name, James Parker. That last name will be so important later on in my life. And my fingers went up under the person's eyelid, over the top of their eye, and touched their optic nerves in the back of their brain, where it connects with their brain. His head jerked back, screaming, rolling on the floor. I'm 9 years old. I didn't want to hurt anybody. I just wanted him to leave me alone. Well, word traveled fast. The little Joey Rebelo had stabbed the guy in the eyeball and dropped him like a bad habit. And for a while, nobody wanted to be next. There's an important phrase: fear breeds respect. Many times when a person's bullied and they finally defend themselves, that bully suddenly wants to be your best friend in the world, because they don't want you to do it to them again. But what I learned also was the beauty of the art, and that some of these amazing men and women who were deadly human beings were also some of the nicest people you would ever hope to meet, because they had nothing to prove. They had no, they were confident in their ability. They knew what they could do. I quote Ed Parker. He was one of the greatest martial minds of the 20th century. And he once said, I look at a person the way a butcher looks at a side of beef. Filet mignon, rump roast, he's dissecting them. And he actually worked as a butcher for 2 years, so he could relate and cross-reference to that. I've had to defend myself on numerous occasions, mostly occupational, with different things, whether I was working in security as a bodyguard or any of those different venues. So I know what it's like to be attacked. I know what it's like to defend yourself. I know what it's like to win and sometimes to lose, but I'm still alive to talk about it. So in the self-defense element, martial arts has literally saved my life. And I've also been able to help others who were being assaulted or attacked at times. And but most importantly, it's made me appreciate the sanctity of life. That, no one deserves to die. Some people sure put themselves on a nomination ballot, but no one deserves to die. And learning about the sanctity of life, you have an appreciation for life and a joy regarding it, and your own life as well as the life of others. So that's what martial arts gave me, and that's why martial arts. And then martial arts became my life. And it is my life. Anyone, you walked in here and you were like, wow. And yes, that's what I normally get. It's wow. Crazy. People walk in here and, I'll finish with a real quick side story that you'll appreciate. So the Hatch Tree Studios has open houses twice a year. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I had a gentleman walk in my door and my students were open. And there's an important phrase I teach all my students: to look at something with an educated eye. Like an artistic expert will look at a piece of work and look at the artwork and the medium, different elements regarding that. And he walked right up to my certificates, and some of them are here, some in my office, and didn't just look at them, studied them. And the minute he started studying them and reading them carefully, I knew he was a martial artist. So I walk up to him and say, "So, sir, excuse me, I couldn't help but notice. So, what martial art do you do?" "Oh, it's no, but I realize you're a martial artist." "Well, you would know, he's like, you'd be shocked and amazed. Who's your instructor? What do you study?" "Oh, I study a system called Sato in out of New York." "Oh, you study with Tanamura Sensei." What? You know my instructor?" "Sure, yeah." Walk in the back, pull up, boom, boom, boom. History magazines was featured on the cover of. "Want to watch footage of your instructor?" "What?" "Sports World. Watch him do Tonfa versus Katana. Here's his other one where he's breaking baseball bats and breaking ice. And he's like, so you say William Oliver, right?" He goes, "Yeah, William was a good friend of mine. Yeah, he was an incredible martial artist, phenomenal. I got Black Fighting Kings if you want to watch some of that." And he's like, "This is amazing." I never thought. His wife walks in and goes, "Honey, you want to?" No, I'm okay. You go send her off, because now we're talking. And now I know his sensei. I know some of the top students. I've shown video footage. I show magazines. And his mind is blown. He's like, and I said, "This is what I do." So when people ask about martial artists, it's not some vague, "Oh, kind of, oh yeah, that little chopsaki thing." I always get the stuff like, "I never want to meet you in a dark alley." First of all, what am I doing in that dark alley, and what are you doing with me in it? Or your person dropping the stairs go, "Wah, woo," and I go, Preparation H does wonders for that. You really should take care of those hemorrhoids you're having problems with. Are you on medication for that? I got a million of them. And I'm also a frustrated stand-up comedian. I'm always cracking jokes about my industry. The one thing about my TV show and what I do, I say, you get to do the two things you can't do during sex: point and laugh. And if I get you to accomplish those two things, I've done my job.
As a Chinese kid growing up, so we've heard a lot of stuff saying, so the martial arts has decreased in the modern era, because in the past it was really like a form of self-defense, but now that we have like modern technology, martial arts has resided to more of like a pure art form. So the aspect where like does self-defense decreases, that's what we hear a lot in China. Like we were having like arguments like if a martial artist go in like a boxing fight with like a professional boxer, who would win. And yeah, I just want to hear your opinions on something.
Sure. All right. So let's call a spade a spade. Is word. All right. You're in mainland China, communist government. Do you really want to teach arts where they can rise up against you? No. We'll make it an art form. We'll make it dance-like. We're going to pull away from the practical self-defense elements. Wushu. Now, I love wushu. Wushu means martial arts in mainland China. But when many traditional martial artists think of wushu, we don't think about practical sparring or fighting. We don't. We think of a more esoteric, dance-like, flowing motions that are more gymnastic in nature. Now, does that mean that some practical elements are still? Sure. There's different things like Sanshou and Lite and different, sparring martial arts. But outside of mainland China, hey, last time I looked, we still have to defend ourselves, because there's always going to be somebody being a jerk. There's always going to be, there's good and there's evil. We're in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It's the number one fishing port in the world, largest contingent of Portuguese. It's also one of the largest heroin distribution centers in the United States. Oh. It also has groups like the Latin Kings and, numerous violence and people getting stabbed and shot on a daily basis. We have gunshot monitors on our telephone poles to tell the police if they hear a gunshot, they can bring a unit down to that area. That's how bad it is. So self-defense, there will always be a need for self-defense. However, in our modern society, like people always say, well, I'll just shoot him with a gun. I go, you got a gun? You got it on you now? No, your ass is mine. Because I've got the training and you don't. Now, does that mean I'm God's gift to the martial arts and Superman on crack? No. I can get defeated just as I've got scars where people try to cut my throat with a straight razor. I've been shot at. I've been shot. As experiences go, they all sucked. But I had the ability that I am still talking to you this day doing this interview because I survived them. I didn't necessarily win, but I'm not dead.
Are you afraid of that?
Without a healthy fear of confrontation, you're living in a dream world. And in so doing, that's why you learn to defend yourself. So when you do have to defend yourself, you don't think about it anymore. You're not conscious. We talk about cross-reference in art. When an artist paints a painting, they have an idea of what they want to paint, but then in the process, and that's the important part, the process of creative artistic expression, things change. I might do something and go, wow, I think this color would look better. Or I think I'm going to change the imagery of this. And in so doing, they foster that creativity. And some people will say, like I went out many years ago with an artist, and I had a running gag within my head that what she started and how she ended it completely changed. And sometimes that would be due to someone else saying something. I would see her doing, wow, that's beautiful. I really like the way you did that. And she'd change it completely. And sometimes you couldn't compliment her about, wow, it's really a nice piece. And you couldn't say that. Now she wants to change it. It was a very interesting relationship. So in regards to self-defense, yes, self-defense is more necessary than ever. Because of the nature recently of MMA, I'm sorry, I don't want to dress in my underwear and fight in a cage like a pit bull. I look at the imagery they give, pit bulls, and I don't want that. I don't want to be an animal that has to urinate and gets connected when they're having sex and run down the street copulating. No, that's silly me. I don't want to be. That's an image I don't think is a very positive one. I'm not a dog. I'm an intelligent form of life. Thank you. So though the Chinese do have dog boxing, which is a really wild art, you got to see it sometime. But yeah, so it's something where I want to be intelligent, articulate. I want to show the beauty of the diversity of the arts, not just any one given art, but show the beauty of all the arts and their contributions. And if I can do that, I've done my job.
So the phenomenon I've mentioned earlier, like how people, like they focus more on the gymnasium aspect of Kungfu. In China, we call that 花拳绣腿. So do you think this 花拳绣腿thing is happening more in China, and it's like the actual like fighting aspect is being inherited by the Western
Now, for this
world?
interview, please translate that phrase into English.
Do you want me to say the question again?
Huh?
Do you want me to state the question again?
No, I want you to state what it means in English.
I just told you. It meant like this aspect of like transferring to like gymnasium. Like there's more like gymnasium stuff in your wushu than actual like combat.
Right. They have in Chinese. They have a phrase: "flowery hands, embroidered legs."
That's
that phrase.
Yes.
Remember, I speak Chinese, so that's a phrase that refers to an art that is more focused on esoteric, flowing arts as opposed to down hard fighting. I think it's all about application. We say the 3 levels: there's application, innovation, and elaboration. Application is the practical self-defense elements. Innovation is new concepts and how to take a particular single movement and apply it against a multitude of attacks. Then elaboration is elaborating upon that concept, and we talk about artistic expression, growing with it, elaborating upon it, innovating new and creative ideas that bring to your mind by doing that basic concept and those first two levels to get you to that third level. And that creativity, creativity, evolution is a beautiful thing. It's art. Art is all about creativity. What we're talking about today, we're talking about arts. We're talking about being creative, to flow in your particular mediums, to express yourself. Suddenly become very Bruce Lee for a moment, right? That was his whole thing. He was some cool cat from the 70s, dude. You ever watch the original Game of Death, not the remake they did, but the actual, when they found the original footage and put it, they go, let's get on the floor, cat, so we can groove. Man, that man was such a child in the 70s. But he was into that. It was the Summer of Love. It was 1969. That was when he was around. So he's hearing all this hippie mentality and Kundalini and Krishnamurti and getting all these different Buddhist philosophies. And that's another important feature of martial arts is philosophy. Matter of fact, David Chow, who was the original choreographer of the Kung Fu TV series with David Carradine, had a book, Kung Fu, The Philosophical Art of Self-Defense. And there's a whole philosophy and the terminology and vocabulary associated with the Chinese martial arts. And all arts, for that matter. And it's your ability to understand not only the physical, but the mental and the philosophical elements of any given art.
So how does the process of aging interact with art? And
we all get older. Who's exempt? If you are, show me a note. More importantly, I want to see who signed it. I'm as of today, I'm 64 years old. Since January of last year, I've gone through 7 strokes. I have had 4 minor strokes, 2 TIAs, which means a transient ischemic attack, which is a precursor to a major stroke, which has all the signs of a stroke, and 1 massive stroke on October 29th. On October 24th, I could take my left foot and kick a baseball cap off somebody's head and cigarette out of their mouth. I had a TIA on the 25th at the Urban Action Showcase event in New York. And 4 days later, I had a massive stroke right here, literally out in the hallway. And whole left side of my body went dead. Whole left side of my face went dead. I couldn't speak. I was in the local New Bedford hospital for a week and a half, and then in therapy for 2.5 weeks in Fall River. I was able to regain the use of my left arm, regain my speech. My left leg, to this day, can only move up 35 degrees out to the side. And as of yesterday, I was finally able to step up a step on a staircase with my left leg. Before that, I would have to step up with my right leg, grab a banister, and pick that leg up. I have friends of mine who have strokes who haven't recovered. And they've only had 1 massive stroke. They're in a wheelchair. Or they've been years being the same way with no improvement. I owe it all to martial arts. It saved my life. Literally saved my life. But am I back to full? No. It's a long process. But you keep moving your leg, and you keep moving your arm, and you keep practicing your martial arts, and you keep teaching, and it's all about you do what you can do.
So this thing of like chi and the health benefits it relates to, is that real?
To simplify chi, many people, it is this metaphysical force of nature. No, let's simplify it. Chi, translated from the Chinese, means air. The story behind Qi, when they were writing the first one, when the Yellow Emperor wanted to synthesize Chinese write into one language, one of the people involved with it was asked to write air. Write air? How in the world do I write something you can't see? One day he's at an outdoor restaurant, and it's a fairly cold day. So they bring him a bowl of steaming rice. And he looks and he sees the steam wafting off the rice. He goes, that's it? So the original character for Qi is a bowl of rice with steam coming off of it. It comes in this pattern, flowing off the rice. That's why you see the little plus sign and the dots. That's rice kernels in a bowl. When you look at the Chinese word for person, it's 2 strokes. Yep. Why? Man walks on 2 legs. What's big? His arms outstretched. What's great or grand? Add an erection. Ain't love grand? Hey, ain't that great? That literally is the translation from the Chinese characters, what they represent as pictures. So when we look at, again, artistic expression, someone said to me the other, well, what are these letters? I go, they're not letters, they're pictures. They're artistic expression. And you see the various forms of flowing artwork. My grandmaster from the Wu-Tang School, that's right, I'm a real member of the real Wu-Tang clan, the real one. Taiwan, but the real one. Grandmaster Liu was known for his calligraphy. He did this beautiful artistic calligraphy. And, that's an important feature that as we become martial artists, it becomes more about being an artist than about martial. And our ability to express ourselves creatively is part of our evolution as not just a martial artist, but as a human being. Real quick, back to Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee said, he was like, as a human being, I want to express myself. I started talking like Bruce. I'm sorry. There's a running gag. You know how you can imitate Bruce Lee? You start with Elmer Fudd. It's like a finger pointing the way to the moon, you rascally rabbit. But there's a lot of truth in it. Just the way he spoke. He had a great sense of humor. He once said, do you know why they hired me to play Kato in the Green Hornet? I was the only Oriental that could say Britt Reed. I was like, in Dragon, they use one of his great jokes when he meets Raymond Chow from Golden Harvest. And he says, Bruce, I've been running all over Hong Kong trying to find you. He looks at him and goes, you should use a car. That was his sense of humor. But he was always talking about, in his later years, about expressing oneself as a human being. So express yourself. And that's how I do it. Great, because I knew a lot of people who knew Bruce. Mm. And they would tell me stories about Bruce, about him and Steve McQueen, about him and James Coburn, and in his early days in Seattle and California and Oakland. And it's amazing. A lot of these people are gone now. But, it's like I'm really looking forward, I'm hoping. I'm going to California later this year. The Martial Arts History Museum wants to, I was inducted in 2024 into their Hall of Fame. They want to bring me in to have a KenpoJoe Rebelo Day at the Martial Arts History Museum. That's huge. Who thought? I never realized how many people I influenced or gotten to know me now because of Action Martial Arts Magazine. And I literally, I'll try not to butter my ears to get my head through the door, but I'm literally world renowned now. I never thought this little kid from New Bedford would ever become this world authority on martial arts and history and all that. I'm just teaching people how to punch kick.
So can you talk about the influence of Batman on you? Sure.
Anyone who walks in my studio sees I have quite a collection of Batman's action figures and different features. We got different Batman paraphernalia and memorabilia. As a small child, I was part of I was pigeon-toed. I was overweight. I came from a broken home. My mother and my father divorced at a very young age. I didn't have a strong father role model, male role model. But I started reading comic books, and I learned about the world's greatest detective, the Cape Crusader. Later on, the Dark Knight, Batman. He was an orphan. His parents tragically killed, murdered in Crime Alley by Joe Chill, shot to death. Being raised by his butler, Alfred Pennyworth, dedicating his life after the tragic death of his parents to becoming more, to becoming a symbol. And back then, martial arts weren't that popular, but he studied chemistry. He studied bodybuilding and weightlifting, studied boxing. And that became, that late years later, that would make him at one point with the modern DC comic history, they quote that Batman was proficient in 126 martial arts. I'm halfway to Batman. I only did 60. But he was such a guide, such an inspiration. Criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot. I shall become a creature of the night. And as he sits in Wayne Manor, smashing through this large window at his mansion, a bat. Now, I became fascinated with that image. Reading DC comic books, watching the early 1960s TV series with Adam West and Burt Ward, which was very campy, but the later films with Michael Keaton and whatnot. If I could, I'd be Batman. But Batman is a tragic entity. He is constantly riddled with the guilt about watching his parents die. He's created his own villains. If you look, the circumstances showed that a lot of times they were created because of Batman. But in relationship to helping someone, to helping those less fortunate. I was teaching my Blue Belt students in Kempo. We have a pledge. I shall never let pride rule my passions, and will, with all the skills I possess, defend the weak, the helpless, and the oppressed. I pledge an unswerving loyalty to my association and to my instructor. In addition, I pledge to earn the self-same loyalty from those who look to me for training. In later incarnations, see Batman travel the world to study with different martial arts masters and learn different styles and learn everything from Tibetan breath control to numerous martial arts. That inspired me. I wanted to be like Batman. I said there are 5 worst things I could want to be in this life. So it was always something very important to me, always a very important character to me. When I was 12 years old, my mother's boyfriend said, oh, you're too old to play with dolls. And he made me throw out my entire Batman collection and G.I. Joe collection. I never forgot that. I did, and as I got older, I started collecting that back and more. I never wanted to forget the importance of Batman was to me as a child and as an adult. I may not dress in a black hood and run around the streets of New Bedford dealing out justice to the cowardly lot, but I can teach. I can pass my knowledge along to others. I can help them defend themselves.